Good evening and welcome to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. I am Buffy, an 18-year criminal defense attorney, and I'm also going to bring not only legal analysis that goes beyond it was a technicality, but also talking to you about compassion for the victims, because these are actual real victims and they're not, video game characters, they're not anime characters, they're not actors. They were people who actually lost their lives at the hands of someone who was a monster and took their lives away from them. And they were loved by others and lived a real life. And we have to be compassionate to those, even if the survivors of these individuals are long since gone. They're still owed decency and respect by nature of being a human being. So this is the case called Vanished in the Rain, the disappearance of Mitrice Richardson. This is a more modern case. It's not been covered very much, and it's emotional and deeply legal. So, a 24-year-old woman vanished after deputies released her alone in the middle of the night with no phone, no wallet, and no way home. And when her body was found, the questions got louder, not quieter. So the victim is Mitrice Richardson. She's 24. She was a college graduate, a psychology major, a dancer, charismatic, loved, struggling quietly with a mental health break. So let's talk about the case overview. September 16, 2009, Malibu, California. A night that should have ended with a ride home. Instead, ended with a disappearance that still torments the community. Mitrice behaves erratically at Jeffrey's restaurant. Staff call the police. Deputies arrest her for dine and dash and suspected intoxication, though her BAC was 0, which should have been a reason to let her go and maybe hand her a telephone or do some preventative measures. I feel like a lot of times, law enforcement doesn't want to think outside the box, because there are measures when someone is having a psychotic break to be able to help them, or a mental health emergency to be able to help them. And it doesn't involve throwing them in jail and hoping that, it all blows over, because that's clearly not the solution. So at 12:28 a.m., deputies released her from Lost Hills Sheriff Station. No wallet, no cell phone, no car, no transportation, no mental health evaluation, no safety check, and no plan. She walks into the darkness, into rural canyons, into nothing. And then silence. So the evening of September 16th at Jeffrey's, speaking in riddles, paranoid, quoting scripture, walking into the kitchen, and not herself. Staff call her behavior odd, but not dangerous. Now, if she was dangerous, clearly maybe she should have been detained. But the fact that she was not harming other individuals or causing a massive disruption means that there should have been something else done. At 8:30 p.m., deputies arrive. They see no signs of alcohol. They still arrest her. I guess they arrest her for trespassing or arrest her for being a nuisance. I'm not sure. It doesn't say. At midnight, she is released alone. At 12:38 a.m., she is seen on nearby closed-circuit television walking toward the canyon. At 6:30 a.m., a homeowner calls 911. A woman is in my backyard. She looks scared. Deputies look around. They find nothing. In 2010, no sightings, no financial activity, no phone usage. Search teams cover canyons repeatedly. On August 9, 2010, her bones are found in a rugged area deputies claimed to have searched extensively. So let's talk about the suspects and theories. Theory 1, an accidental death due to disorientation. Could she have fallen while wandering with no sense of direction? Possible. I mean, it's after midnight. I don't know. I've not been to California, so I can't really give the circumstances, but you kind of wonder how dark it would be in that area and how scary it would potentially be as well. Theory 2, foul play. Family believes someone harmed her. Her remains were found in a location difficult to access without assistance. Maybe someone offered her a ride and she accepted the ride and then they ended up harming her in some way. Theory 3, animal predation after death. explains scattering of remains, but not how she got there. And then theory 4, death shortly after being released. The area is deadly at night. Cliffs, coyotes, no lights, uneven terrain, but the condition of the bones raises questions. So there is something in the law called duty of care. And so the fact that the police had some concerns about her mental stability and where she was, not that she was being violent or that she was harming anyone, but that they were questioning the fact because they realized that she didn't have alcohol. If she was, if she was overusing alcohol, then clearly the dram shop things might kick in from Jeffries. But this is a scenario where the deputies knew she was having mental issues, and they released a mentally deteriorating woman alone at midnight. So if she's clearly disoriented, they need to have a standard duty of care for a person who is going through some mental health emergency. And shouldn't that be having her maybe sleep it off, trying to figure out if they can contact someone who can actually come and assist her? Maybe she needs her medication, like something. Have her assessed by a doctor or a psychological evaluation or a mental health evaluation. No, we're just going to let her out at midnight and drop her off near the canyons, or have her walk towards the canyons, and hopefully she finds a ride home. That is not the appropriate standard of care. And it's California Penal Code 849. Mental health welfare codes. Like in Florida, for instance, they have the Baker's Act, right? If you have someone who is behaving like that, you can actually take them into custody under the Baker Act. And also, it's a basic safety protocol, right? If she's dealing with all this stuff and she's, maybe hallucinating or going into the, doing things that she wouldn't normally do and quoting scripture and just acting strangely, that should be a sign that you need to protect her from herself. So it was an improper release decision. She should have been held for observation, evaluated, offered a ride. I mean, hello, they're deputies. They have cars. Tell me where you live. Tell me where you need to go. We'll get you there. Or transferred to a facility, maybe for a 24, 48-hour hold. There is also a big issue, too, with this case, is the missing footage. Sheriff's Department says footage of her release no longer exists, yet other footage survived. So does that mean that someone else was potentially involved, someone from the police department, and maybe someone tried to cover it up? Or, again, I don't know this police department, but I do think it's very suspicious that certain parts of the footage were maintained and other parts, especially her release, are no longer available. That to me smells bad. Also, there's issues with the search inconsistencies. Her remains were found less than a mile from her last known location, in an area previously searched, with clothing separated from bones. There was also mishandling of the remains. Skeletal remains were moved before coroners arrived, which is a major, major violation. It also leads to civil rights implications. The family rightfully alleges negligence. Not that they intentionally meant to harm her, but their actions were so detrimental as to create a nexus to what ended up being her end result. Had they held on to her, she might be alive still today. And also there's the idea that maybe discrimination influenced their treatment of her. Maybe they were discriminating because they felt that she was strange. Maybe they were discriminating against her because she was African American. That could be also. So let's talk about theories. Was she experiencing mania or psychosis? Signs strongly point to a mental health break, but the sheriff's department never evaluated her, so we'll never know. Why release her alone at midnight? This is the question that defines the case. Why did they decide to let her go at midnight? Why not wait until daybreak, or a little bit after daybreak, or after lunch, and then let her go? Or let her make a phone call? I don't know. Did someone pick her up? It's possible, but we don't know. Did she die quickly that night? Then how were her remains found in an area previously searched? So the case status, the official ruling is undetermined. Her unofficial consensus is negligence played a major role, and it absolutely did. It is the big red flag in this case, and it is a heartbreaking flag if you think about their family. The fact that there were calls for her who were trying to help her, but the police, for whatever reason, didn't seem to want to help her. They couldn't be bothered to give her the basic decency to make sure that she wasn't walking alone in canyon area and rocks and all the terrain and end up dying as a result. Her death remains unsolved. You know what? Poor Mitrice Richardson got a lot less than she deserved. And that is extremely sad, especially for individuals who are supposed to protect and serve their community. They failed her, 100% failed her. And my heart goes out to their families because that is atrocious. And I hope that they potentially have some legal action because clearly it's a pretty easy case, I would think. So, like and subscribe and let us know if there's certain cases that you might be interested in. And we would love to see you back here again soon. So Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. So in this episode, we broke down the disappearance of 24-year-old Mitrice Richardson, a case marked by mental health crisis, law enforcement negligence, and unresolved questions that still linger more than a decade later. Through timelines, suspect theories, and legal analysis, we examine what went wrong and why justice remains incomplete. Again, my heart goes out to the family, and thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Bye-bye.